Jerusalem, the renowned holy city of biblical times, and the site of Jesus Christ's last days on earth. For Christians and Jews, a memorial of some of the most significant people and events in their religious history, and therefore a place of pilgrimage. For Muslims, there is Mecca, famous as a religious center since the days of the Old Testament, and greatly magnified in importance by the birth of the Prophet Muhammad, here in the 7th century after Christ. The most sacred of the Muslim holy cities, it draws millions of pilgrims every year. Well, we've all heard of Jerusalem and Mecca, and yet few Westerners know anything about this holy city, situated on the shores of the Bay of Bengal in India. It is called Jagannath Puri, and like Jerusalem and Mecca, it hosts millions of pilgrims every year. For thousands of years, Puri has been famous for its annual Rath Yatra, the world's oldest and largest religious festival. Each year, the deities of Jagannath, literally translated as Lord of the Universe, his brother Baladev, his sister Subhadra, come out of the temple for their once-a-year public appearance in a grand procession. Devotees from all over India throng in their millions to take darshan, or audience. For the world's 700 million Hindus, the ancient holy city of Puri is a spiritual landmark. Not only because of its festival or its beauty, or even because of its historic temples. Rather, like Mecca and Jerusalem, Jagannath Puri has achieved much of its present-day religious importance because of a great saintly person who once resided here. The year is 1511, and a young saint leaves his birthplace in Navadweep on the banks of the Ganges in Bengal and travels on foot with his closest associates toward Puri. Although still a young man, whose golden effulgence, beauty and keen intellect had brought him fame in Bengal, at the age of 24 he has already accepted the austere life of a celibate sannyasi monk. His mission is to spread love of God throughout the world, through the singing and glorifying of the names of God, as recommended in the timeless Vedic scriptures. He is to become one of India's most renowned spiritual preceptors and leaders in a social and religious revolution. His name is Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, and he is to leave an everlasting imprint upon the history of Puri. From this place, Sri Caitanya first sees the chakra, the disc of Vishnu atop the famous Jagannath temple of Puri, 6 miles away. Here a memorial was established. It houses Sri Caitanya's footprints in marble. Sri Caitanya immediately goes to the famous temple, which is thousands of years old. Inside are the sacred deities of Lord Jagannath, which have been revered since antiquity, and are known to bestow special blessings on their worshippers. Upon seeing the deity, Sri Caitanya is so overwhelmed with spiritual ecstasy that he loses external consciousness and faints. He is brought to this nearby house, the home of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, the leading philosopher and spiritual advisor to the king of Orissa, King Prataparudra. Sarvabhauma is India's most famous Mayavadi, or impersonalist, who teaches that God is energy, but without personality and form. The next morning, on this seat, the proud Sarvabhauma expounds his impersonal interpretation of the Vedanta philosophy in order to convert the young sannyasi to his view. For 7 days he continues his discourse without interruption. On the 8th day, Sri Caitanya replies, I can understand the meaning of each verse very clearly, but your explanations cover the real meaning." He then explains that the sacred Vedanta scriptures clearly uphold the personal feature of the absolute truth as supreme, that God is a person with unlimited spiritual form. Sri Caitanya devastates all of Sarvabhauma's arguments, and finally reveals his true nature to the bewildered scholar. He transforms himself, and then appears in his original form as Krishna. Sarvabhauma becomes overwhelmed by this revelation and instantly surrenders to Sri Caitanya, whom he recognizes as the Supreme Personality of Godhead incarnate. This six-armed form of Lord Caitanya is called Sri Sad Bhuj. The upper two hands hold the bow and arrow of Lord Ramachandra. The middle two hold the flute of Lord Krishna, and the lower two hold the danda and water pot of Caitanya himself. Pilgrims come to visit the home of the famous Sarvabhauma, and they remember these pastimes of Lord Caitanya as they worship these deities of Radha and Krishna here. After the conversion of Sarvabhauma, a religious, social and cultural revival of unprecedented proportions begins to take place in the state of Orissa. Lord Caitanya prophesies that the chanting of the holy names will spread worldwide and leaves Puri to expand the preaching. He visits all the major pilgrimage places of South India, the temples of Ranganath, Meenakshi Devi and Rameshwaram, to name a few. He even induces wild animals of the jungle to set aside their natural enmity and dance together. At last, in the year 1513, he returns to Puri to a tumultuous Rath Yatra festival. King Prataparudra personally begins to sweep the path before the deity with a golden broom, a tradition followed even today by his descendants. The Rath Yatra procession ends at the temple of Gundicha, which is surrounded by gardens and lakes, and these appear to Sri Caitanya like Vrindavan, the spiritual realm of Lord Krishna. With his devotees, Sri Caitanya reenacts the pastimes of Vrindavan here. Sometimes they enter the lake Indradyumna, where the Lord sports with his associates. At the nearby Alanath temple, Sri Caitanya prostrates himself before the Vishnu deity, and his body becomes so hot due to his feelings of intense love of God that the stone floor upon which he lays melts, and to this day bears the imprint of his body. This monastery on the western side of the Jagannath temple is constructed by a contemporary associate of Sri Caitanya, Paramananda Puri. But unfortunately, the water so necessary for the self-sufficiency of the compound is bitter and unusable. Sri Caitanya prays to Jagannath to bring the sweet water of the Ganges hundreds of miles to the well. Immediately, the water becomes sweet, and Sri Caitanya proclaims that anyone who drinks this water will certainly develop pure love of Godhead. Naturally, for devout visitors to Puri, stopping here for a drink is mandatory.